Who's in the dog house? Who's God, aren't you glad I don't sing? Who is in the dog house this week? None other than Nelson Brison of Contingency Safety Solutions. And we get into it. We get talking about the relationship that the safety department has with the HR department and a lot of other stuff right across many different areas, transportation, mining, and gas, forest, that type of thing. So join us, Nelson Brison of Contingency Safety Solutions. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's good to be here.
Hey, welcome back. This is the second time we've had you on the show. Nelson, what is it that we are discussing this week?
Probably a variation on the same topic we discuss when we're talking on a podcast or we're talking in person, Chris. We're going to talk about safety, of course. What I thought we'd start out with a little bit is how safety across all industries is affected by safety in trucking, and in the reverse a little bit. And the safety programs of trucking and the safety programs of the industries that they serve tend to be in, I don't know if we say discord, or sometimes they match up and sometimes they don't.
All right. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Tell us a little bit about Contingency Safety Solutions.
Well, we are a full service safety consulting, safety training company. We focus on safety leadership, safety management, and developing proper safety management systems for companies. We offer live, virtual, and a full breadth of online training courses for the situations that each one applies to. We have an amazing software system that we can put into place to help companies manage their safety programs. And we have a team of very, very experienced senior consultants in the trucking industry, construction industry, and mining industry. So, and industry, I guess. Industry and manufacturing fit in there too. So, and many of these people have worked across industry by the nature of safety and the history of the safety industry, as you know, Chris. In order to survive, people tend to move across industries and they get a better breadth of training and a little better breadth of knowledge. And we've had these discussions as we spend a lot of time developing programs and systems for the trucking industry. The questions always come up is where the trucks are going and where they're ending up and the situations they're working into.
So how does safety in trucking, so I understand that your company services more than just the trucking industry. So how does safety in trucking go across and affect the different industries?
Well, some it doesn't seem to matter, or they don't care, but that's changing, thankfully. But when a truck enters any kind of a yard or any kind of a work site, that trucking company is now under the safety program and the legal requirements of the construction site or the mine or the business that they've pulled up to deliver their product or pick up their product. Now, the safety company or the receiving company or the construction company or the mining company or the oil and gas company, whatever the industry is, if their safety program isn't up to snuff and something goes wrong, it falls back on the trucking company's safety program. If the trucking company's safety program isn't up to snuff, then that puts the facility that they're servicing in jeopardy and in liability.
Yeah. It, it,
Our problem, go ahead, Chris, I'm sorry.
well, I was going to say one thing affects the other. Go ahead.
Yes, they're all interconnected. One of the things we'd like to focus on, and it's a little bit of a long-term process, but I think it goes industry-wide, and I think it goes through the safety world, and it goes through the management world of businesses. And we're running into on occasion, and one of the things I wanted this to lead into a little bit was the barriers that both businesses like your own and businesses like myself run into in trying to address and get these messages and this information to the leadership and the decision makers of companies, that simply with a little bit of change in policy and culture, they can institute these things that protect them, protect their employees, protect their subcontractors. And the biggest thing I think that we need to get through to them is where their liability lays if something does go wrong. And it goes right back to the top of the management people, including owners, senior management, top safety people. And if it involves the HR department who controls safety, which I'd like to discuss a little bit further as we go further, in some situations, it can involve them or anybody that can make a decision that can affect safety or safety mitigation.
Right. So you're talking about, I love talking about liability because it's something that I believe isn't discussed enough. The exposure that management has, and management, I'm more familiar in the trucking industry. Management could be a dispatcher. And even though
Right.
dispatch may not be considered management in a trucking company, but in a court of law, they would be considered management.
In
Uh,
the eyes of the law, it is because they have the right to make that decision that can change an
yeah.
outcome,
Yeah. So,
basically.
describe to me a little bit more the liability that, quote, management is placed under.
Well, without going into too much detail, when something goes wrong in Canada, um, you can be charged. You can be charged by the occupational health and safety laws, and you can be charged under the criminal laws. There's two ways you can be charged, and being cleared in one doesn't necessarily mean you're being cleared in another. And one of the things that they do is they look at a safety program. Not only do they look, did the company have a safety program? Was a safety program implemented? Was it implemented and was it used?
I was going to say,
What are your records?
was it adhered to the safety
Right.
program?
Did your dispatcher, as you mentioned, understand the safety program and give out the right information to that driver that follows your safety policy? And if they didn't, we already know there's cases that have been blown up to huge dollars. And those are American ones, and it's the trend is happening in Canada. And I'm not as familiar with American laws as I am with Canadian laws, but I know in Canada they also go after the individuals who could make the decision, and they can go to jail. It's not only fines, it's not only suspensions. Health and safety can shut your company down or suspend it or stop it from operating. That can be a death knell. We've already had that happen to many companies in business by with our latest pandemic, and most companies are scrambling to get things back to some sort of normalcy and get their people hired back and try to retain their people, and they're safety is kind of being a little bit left out in our
Yep.
experience. Although things are starting to, we're getting busy as hell right now. Excuse my language, but we're running into these barriers where we're not getting through to the leaders, and they
Well,
really are liable. They can go to jail for this.
and I just want to mention, and I'm sure you're familiar with the West Ray mine disaster because it happened in Nova Scotia.
We
Um,
actually use that story in our leadership series, training series as part of our demonstration. Our lead consultant was very involved in that.
Yeah. The reason I like to mention it is because of that loss of many lives. A new law was done in Canada, and this has put the liability on the management. This new law,
It has.
those lives, even though they were lost prematurely, I want to mention it just because there was positive results from those.
Very positive results, and it took a while for them to come around. I believe it took about 6 years for the law to be changed, but during those 6 years, what had happened is the management and the owners of the mine who were being investigated and they were trying to charge them, they left the country.
Yeah.
And they had no way to hold them here. So that was a big concern, and they've changed that now. And you can go to jail for as long as 10 years for some of these things.
Yeah.
It's not minor.
So
it's very serious.
That's the liability that management, and quote, as we said, management could include anybody in a supervisory role, can go to jail, can be fined, can face court. So
Yes.
Let's talk about safety and how it moves across platforms. And by that, I mean, sorry, not platforms, departments, because I know you want to talk about HR and how HR seems to be running the safety departments.
Well, they are. And in some cases, in small companies, when they start up, it might even be the right place to start it. Often it is. But as companies grow and develop, the HR department becomes, and the HR position becomes more complicated and more complex. And so does the safety department. And the safety department, once a company is over, even into the 20-person range, I believe the safety department needs to stand alone and stand beside HR. And I think they need, and I believe they need to work together in collaboration, not one in servitude or looking up to another. They're both areas of extreme expertise.
Yeah. And how does...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, how does it affect the safety department in transportation?
Well, we run into some of the responses we've had, and our positive response level after, since the pandemic and the fear levels have dissipated a little bit, has rocketed. But during the pandemic, as people were uncertain, some of the things we heard was, we have an HR department and we have that all under control. And sometimes we could ponder and probe and ask a few questions, and they really didn't. And we actually made some headway. And other times it was just a shutdown. They weren't interested in talking. They weren't interested in exploring. And some of these companies we know really don't have proper safety programs. I know people that work within them and, down the line. And I think there's a little bit of protectionism going on at that level. And I think, again, it's something we need to work on as safety people. One, to establish ourselves a little bit better within corporations. And that's our job as companies, and your job as risk managers and risk assessment people, to help and to educate these people a little bit that the safety departments stand alone, and they stand and report to upper management. Well, culture increases, productivity increases, and when those two things increase, everybody in business knows that profitability increases.
Well, and the safety
and
department
retention
has to be their own advocate. They have to, even though they are working with HR, the HR people may know, and in most cases, they know very little about transportation safety and the different...
or specific safety of any industry.
Well, yeah, hopefully they're well versed in HR rules. Labor
they usually
Canada,
are, yes.
And the different acts that may be affecting them. But transportation safety, how to appeal to a truck driver specifically and encourage them not to speed, is a different set of skills than getting somebody to wear their hard hat, for instance. Maybe similar, but could be totally different.
Right. And having the message filtered through an HR department or an operations department. I shouldn't just be picking on HR departments because they do, a good job, and a lot has been laid at their feet. Sometimes they're a little bit like a collection place where what they, whenever they can't find a department to handle something, it seems to be slid under HR. And safety, again, sometimes it starts out there and it's a good place for it, because if you don't have a dedicated safety department and you're just starting to put together committees and that, it's good for HR to understand it and to coordinate it initially. But when you get to a certain level, Chris, it needs to separate itself and it needs to report directly to upper management. It needs to have a clear path. And even when we often see the marriage of safety and operations. Well, if anybody's ever really watched anybody that's the head of an operations department, again, any company in industry, in particularly trucking, where the operations and maintenance are just off the charts, safety is a sideline for them and an afterthought and something they have to keep up on. And it ends up being a reactive situation. And we need to put it into a proactive situation, and that changes everything. And I guess that's where I kind of wanted to take this conversation and kind of flip it back on you, Chris, is for your input on this. You have an awful lot of experience in dealing with trucking companies and talking to them about their reducing their risk levels and how to do it, and recommending what kind of programs they should be looking at, and different providers that they should be talking to for the different services that they need.
Well, I mean, all these trucking companies, a lot of my customers don't have HR departments. They have a safety department that unfortunately is more a compliance department than it is
Yes.
a safety department. They're more focused on having a piece of paper in a file rather than reducing crashes or reducing violations. Because, for instance, an example might be speeding violations. Because of ELDs today, there's a lot more
Oh, it's going to
um,
change things a lot.
well, there's just so much more
It just
information
is.
available to, we opened up by talking about liability, and there's so much more information available to either prove or prove your innocence or convict a company on their negligence because of all this data. Do you want to talk about a little bit about some of the data that's out there or how it gets used?
Yes, I want you to explain some of that, because this is critical. And I don't think leadership is fed this information sometimes, or it's not fed to them as this is a critical mass issue.
Well,
And it is.
I mean, I've got one client who, unfortunately, upper management, as much as I have pointed out to them their speeding violations, um, they're not concerned. And the speeding violations, by the way, largely, and this happens across the board for many companies, I believe, in Northern Ontario, where the Highway 1 is a speed limit of 90K, some
Is it
cases
ever?
80K.
It is the speed trap capital of Canada. Boy, you don't want to go over.
Well, and we've got proof that the trucks are doing 105 and
Yeah.
consistently doing 105 in a 90K zone. And in
And
some cases,
yeah,
going down a hill faster than 105. So now they're 15K above and going even more. And if I was a lawyer, I would love all this data because the companies aren't doing anything about it. Now, what should the companies be doing about it?
they need to be instituting a proper management system that is proactive, that trains their drivers. You have proper ELDs in place and you follow the data that they provide. You do proper record keeping, And your training becomes proactive. You don't react after the situation, and you have to show that you're implementing that system and you're using that system. You have to have proper safety policies. And for a trucking company to come up with all of that on their own is daunting.
Yeah.
But there are many companies in the world, us included, great companies in Canada. We collaborate with them on the West Coast as well, and in Alberta, and in Ontario. And we all offer the service of not only setting these things up for you and designing them for you, we design them custom to your company, to your practice, to your region, what your policies are, recommend how your policies should adapt and change to reflect what you're trying to accomplish, and then stay with the company and help them implement it until it is fully implemented and becomes safety culture. And when we do that with any company, again, not only trucking, but any industry, sorry, I lost a bud, old guy years, I guess. And when we do that with any company, we the feedback we get is amazing, and their costs go down. Initially, there's some cost to setting up a safety program, like there is to setting up any program, of course. Employee retention. And in trucking, employee retention doesn't just involve drivers. It involves dock workers. It involves warehouse workers. It involves dispatchers. It involves maintenance people, mechanics. It involves a lot of different people in a lot of different trades. And they're all at risk.
Yep.
You put a proper policy in place, and the policy transcends the occupation. Right? Because you have certain policies that will affect the drivers, their inspections, their hours, their speeds, all of, and all of things in that area. You'll have specifics built into the program that will look after your maintenance people and your mechanics, your warehouse workers, and your office and management people. They'll know where their liabilities are, and it just becomes part of the day-to-day work. And when you get to a point in a business where everybody in the business is on the same wavelength or the same team, people use team a lot without understanding it, in my opinion. But when you have a situation where everybody in the company from the top down is saying, we do it this way here because that's a proper way. And when somebody's not doing it that way, immediately we just don't do that here.
Yeah.
And that's called standards. And I think we need to set and keep and maintain standards. And I believe if you do that, that's what the lawyers are trying to pick apart. And that's what the judges are picking on. If you have standards, are you following them? Are they being implemented? And we call that a safety management system.
And that's what contingency safety solutions can assist with, correct?
We certainly can. It's our specialty.
And you are located in Eastern Canada. What province specifically?
We are located in Nova Scotia.
And
I also have consultants located in Manitoba, Alberta, British Columbia. Well, I guess Cape Breton's Nova Scotia, but I like to tease those fellas. He's a big fella too. I better be gentle. But he actually he travels to projects. This gentleman, and yes, we are, and we collaborate with other safety companies like ourselves. If somebody calls us and we can't handle it, I just pick up the phone to a company that I know does equal and good work, and I say, "Can you look after these people?"
I was going to say,
I'd like to. Yes, go ahead.
You left out Ontario and Quebec in your service areas.
No, I didn't.
You
They're
didn't
just
mention
assumed. I'm sorry. Well, they're just so big. Most of the conversations I have go through Ontario or Quebec, and I worked extensively for many years in the steel industry, shipping steel to and from everywhere in North America, and bringing it over by ship from Europe when we brought over rebar or specialty steel. And when America wouldn't sell us steel from different countries at different times. And the entire time I worked for them, I worked for Quebec-based companies.
There you go.
So yeah. So I just assume they're paying attention. Their economies are so big and so vibrant. But in today's world, everybody's off to the same start right now because we all were shut down at different levels. And Ontario and Quebec, in some ways, more severely because of your relationship with your economy to the cross-border economy and the struggles getting across and getting cleared and vaccinations and different rules at every different border crossing. It's just been, a little bit insane, for lack of a better word. And trucking companies have really come to the fore. They've shown up. They've delivered. They've taken abuse. They couldn't have places to go to the bathroom at times. And I'm a little ashamed to say the Americans did a much better job of looking after their truckers than we did at certain places, at certain times.
In some,
hope that changes in some cases.
I think a lot of Canadians also stepped up in different ways.
We
Nelson,
did. We did.
What's the best way to get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of us through our website,
which is what?
contingencysafety.css. You can get a hold of me through LinkedIn at any time. And I guess that's probably the best way. We are on Instagram as well.
Well, and I will have your contact info in the show notes below.
Thank you very much, Chris. And we are approachable. And my motto is, let's get it done right for industry. And if that means I have to refer a company away from myself to a company with a better expertise in a certain area, I'll do that immediately.
Yeah.
Because the idea is to get people safe, get these companies safe. And if I do that and that company's happy, they're going to recommend me as well as the company that did the work for them. And we need to get that wheel of reciprocation going a little bit in the safety world. And I think it'll have a positive effect on how we're received in the trucking and the industrial and the manufacturing and the mining industries. And none of them are exclusive. They're all interrelated.
Absolutely. I mean, safety, saving lives and reducing liability is what Contingency Safety Solutions is all about. Nelson.
It really is. Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on board. Thanks for appearing in the doghouse.
You always make it so easy on me, Chris. It's wonderful. I love
it. Hope you loved the show as much as I did. Please leave us a like, a thumbs up, a review, a comment, a rating if it is in your heart. Thank you so much. And I do really appreciate your time. And join us again next week for another exciting interview.